I'm a single dad who showed up to watch his daughter dance, and 3 mothers decided that was enough to destroy my life, my career, my marriage, and my freedom. They almost pulled it off. The snap was loud enough to cut through piano music. I heard it from the top of the stairs. 65 minutes into rehearsal, sitting on a folding chair in the hallway outside the storage room like I'd been doing for 6 weeks straight. I had a cup of coffee going cold in my hand and my phone face down on my knee because I had learned, fast and painfully, that even checking a text message within eyeline of the studio windows was grounds for an accusation. Then came the scream. Not a scraped knee cry, not a tantrum. This was the sound a parent recognizes in the marrow, the kind that empties your chest in half a second and gets your legs moving before your brain has even caught up. I was down those stairs in 4 steps. Maybe 3. The studio door was propped open 6 inches and I hit it at a full push and it swung wide and I was in the room and scanning for her, scanning past the frozen cluster of little girls in their pink tights, past the instructor with both hands raised like she was trying to stop traffic, past the bear and the mirror and the sound system still playing Tchaikovsky like nothing had happened. And I found her, Lily, 8 years old, on the hardwood floor near the center of the room, her right ankle twisted at an angle that made my stomach turn inside out. Crying the way kids cry when the pain is so big it comes out as hiccups between the screams, reaching for me, her little hands opening and closing on the air. I took 2 steps toward her, and 3 women stepped into my path. Shoulder to shoulder, a wall. Karen Aldis in the middle, the one who'd been running point on this since week 1. Pink fleece vest and that look on her face like she had been waiting for exactly this moment and was not going to let it go to waste. Donna Hirsch on her left, arms crossed, chin lifted. Paula Merton on the right, phone already out, already recording. "You stay back," Karen said. Her voice was very calm, controlled, deliberate. "We're not letting you near these children." My daughter was 6 feet behind them screaming my name. "That's my daughter on that floor," I said it once. "Even. No yelling. She is injured. Move. We've already called the police," Donna said. "Don't touch anyone." "Daddy," Lily screamed it. Real fear in it now. Not just pain. Fear. "Daddy, please." I pushed through them. Not a shove. Not an assault. I moved Donna's shoulder with my forearm, and I went through the gap and I dropped to my knees beside Lily and I put my hand on her face and told her I was there, I was right there, she was going to be okay. I got my phone out and dialed 911. I kept her still because I could see the ankle and I knew moving it wrong would make it worse. I kept my voice steady for her even though everything in me was shaking. Behind me I could hear Karen on her own phone. Her voice had changed, gone up a register, gone wet and trembling. Victim voice. A voice I had not heard from her in 6 weeks of increasingly hostile standoffs, because she only ever deployed it for an audience. "Yes, there's a man at the ballet studio. He's been watching the girls for weeks and he just grabbed one of them." I did not turn around. I kept my eyes on Lily and I kept her hand in mine and I talked to the 911 dispatcher, and I waited. The ambulance and the police arrived at the same time. I remember the specific quality of the evening light through the studio windows when the red and blue started strobing in. October. The sun already going down by 6. Lily had stopped screaming, but she was still crying softly now, gripped tight on my wrist. An officer came through the door, young, mid-20s. He scanned the room and his eyes landed on me on the floor beside a child, and I watched his face in real time. The half-second of softness, man with an injured kid, and then Karen's voice reached him from across the room and something shifted. A switch thrown. He crossed to me and his hand went to my shoulder and his voice changed register the way hers had. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step away. This is my daughter. Her name is Lily. She needs to go to the hospital. Sir, step away from the child, please." Lily's hand tightened on my wrist. "My daddy is innocent," she said. She said it with everything she had, like she knew, the way kids sometimes know, that something large and bad was happening and she was trying to stop it with the only words she had. Nobody listened to her. They let me ride in the ambulance. That part I have to be honest about. Nobody physically prevented that. But they had a second officer get my name and my ID before we loaded, and there was a conversation between the 2 of them behind the vehicle that I could see through the back window, both of them looking at me, and I knew what that conversation was about. Lily went into surgery at 7:42 p.m., fractured fibula. Clean break, the surgeon said later. She'd land wrong coming down from a jump. Completely accidental, she'd be in a boot for 6 weeks and physical therapy after that. She'd dance again, he said that last part directly to me, maybe because he could see what my face was doing. At 8:15 p.m., a different officer came to the family waiting room and told me I was needed at the station. I told him my daughter was in surgery. He said it wouldn't take long. He said I could come voluntarily or he could make it less voluntary. He said it quietly and without malice. But he said it. I went. I need to back up, because none of this started on the night Lily broke her ankle. It started 8 months earlier, on a Tuesday in February, in the parking lot of a Panera Bread in Hartwell, Georgia. Population about 9,000. The kind of town where everybody knows your business before you do. I was 34. Lily was 8. Her mother, my wife Renata, had left 13 months before that. Not dramatically. No explosion, no affair uncovered, no single breaking point I could point to. She left the way some people leave, slowly and then all at once. She told me she'd been unhappy for a long time, and that she needed to find out who she was outside of being someone's wife and someone's mother. She said it kindly. She cried. We both did. The custody arrangement we agreed on gave Lily primary residence with me and visitation with Renata every other weekend and holidays. Renata had moved to Savannah. She wasn't absent exactly. She called, she sent cards, she showed up for the visits, but she wasn't present in the daily way, the school pickups and the dinner table and the bad dreams at 2 in the morning. That was me. I was an IT project manager for a regional logistics company called Tri-State Distribution. My title was Senior Systems Coordinator. Salary was $71,000 a year. Good benefits. I'd been there 6 years. I had a manager named Doug who liked me and a reputation as the person who fixed things quietly and without drama. That reputation would matter later. Lily had been asking about ballet since she was 5. We lived 22 minutes from the nearest studio, the Hartwell School of Dance on Chestnut Street, run by an instructor named Ms. Priya. Classes were Tuesday and Thursday evenings from 5:30 to 6:45 p.m. I enrolled her in September of that year when she started 2nd grade. The first Tuesday I walked in, I was the only man in the waiting area. That was simply a fact. Mothers with their phones, their conversations, their easy familiarity with each other. I didn't expect to be immediately welcomed. I expected the kind of polite neutrality you get as a newcomer anywhere. A few months and I'd be furniture. Karen Aldis introduced herself before I'd even sat down. That I remember clearly. She walked up fast, not warmly, and the thing she said, the first sentence, no pleasantries, was, "It's strange that a man wants to be here surrounded by little girls." I remember the specific sensation of that sentence landing, not hot anger, something colder and heavier, the recognition that this was not going to be the kind of thing I could charm my way out of. I told her I was Lily's dad. I told her Lily's mom wasn't in the picture day to day. I smiled. I moved to the corner. Karen Aldis was 41. Her daughter Maya was also 8. She ran a real estate business out of her home and sat on the board of 2 local nonprofits, and was, by all observable metrics, a woman who had organized her identity entirely around being the most important person in whatever room she was in. She was smart, and she had charisma, and she had spent enough years building local social capital that a word from her in the right direction could open doors or close them. She had made up her mind about me in the first 4 seconds. I know that now. What I didn't know then was that she had already started talking. The second week, it was Donna Hirsch who stood up in the middle of rehearsal. The parents could watch through a glass panel in the door and waved her hand at Miss Priya and announced loudly that I was recording the children. I had a Nokia 3310, the kind of phone a person uses when they've decided smartphones are more distraction than value. Brick solid, no real camera to speak of. I held it up. Miss Priya barely glanced at it. What she said to me, quietly, in the hallway after, stays with me. I believe you, but what matters right now is that these women feel unsafe. Can you wait upstairs during practice just until things settle down? I understood the anxiety. I understood that in a world where genuine predators exist and genuine harm happens, a strange man appearing in a space full of small girls can produce a fear response that is not entirely irrational. I understood that. I gave it every charitable interpretation I had. I went upstairs every Tuesday and Thursday for 6 weeks. Folding chair, cold coffee, my daughter dancing 30 feet below me and me hearing the music through the floorboards. My daughter knowing I was there. That was enough. I kept telling myself that was enough. I should have paid more attention to the escalation. In retrospect, I can trace it step by step and see exactly where it was going. But when you're inside it and trying to be reasonable, it's hard to see the pattern until the pattern is the whole picture. Week 3, Karen approached Miss Priya after class and asked that I be required to sign a formal agreement not to photograph children at the studio. Miss Priya told her the studio already had a photography policy, and all parents were bound by it. Karen said that wasn't sufficient given the circumstances. Week 4, a note appeared on the community board at the Hartwell Public Library. I never saw it directly. A woman named Elena Chen, whose daughter was not in Lily's class but who lived 2 streets over from us, texted me a photo of it. It described a suspicious man attending ballet classes at the Hartwell School of Dance and encouraged concerned parents to attend the next school board meeting to discuss predatory behavior in children's spaces. My name wasn't on it. Just enough detail to be obvious to anyone who knew. I showed it to Miss Priya. She looked genuinely uncomfortable. She said she'd look into it. She didn't call me back. Week 5, Donna Hirsch filed a complaint with the studio's parent board, a group I hadn't known existed, requesting that male parents be required to have criminal background checks before attending rehearsals. My background check was clean, has always been clean, but the framing of the request made the news local and fast. Within 48 hours, Doug called me into his office at Tri-State and told me, with visible discomfort, that HR had received an anonymous tip about my situation and was asking him for context. I told him everything. He believed me. He went to bat for me, but the seed was planted. Week 6, Paula Merton, the third woman, the one who'd been quietest, posted in the Hartwell Parents Facebook group. The post was carefully worded. She didn't make direct accusations. She said she was concerned about the changing climate of safety in our children's recreational spaces and linked to a general article about child protection. The comments did the rest. By the time I saw it, there were 63 comments. Most of them were about me without naming me. A few of them named me. I had Lily that Thursday. She came down the stairs dressed for practice. Pink leotard and her hair in the bun she'd learned to do herself. And she looked at me with a kind of determined brightness that broke something in me a little. She knew something was wrong. Kids always know. She was pretending it wasn't, for my sake, and I was pretending it wasn't for hers. We drove to the studio. I walked her in. I went upstairs. 65 minutes later, I heard the snap. That's the part you already know. Here is what the night at the station looked like from the inside. Detective Porter was around 50. Career cop, the kind who'd seen enough to develop a professional neutrality that could read as either open-mindedness or judgment depending on which way the wind was blowing. He came into the interview room with a manila folder. The folder was too thick. That was the first thing I noticed. Events from earlier that same evening would not yet produce a folder that thick. Whatever was in it had been prepared before the incident with Lily's ankle. He spread out printed screenshots, a group chat, screenshotted in sequence, spanning 6 weeks. The group was called, I am not making this up, Studio Safety Moms. Karen, Donna, Paula, and 9 other women. The screenshots began the same week I had enrolled Lily. Week 1, Karen describing my appearance, my corner position, my obvious attempt to stay out of sight, which is exactly what a predator would do. Week 2, strategy, who would raise the recording concern, how to phrase it to Miss Priya, whether to go to the police immediately or build a case first. Week 3, Karen sharing a link to an article about child safety and suggesting they document every class. Photos of him sitting there, timestamps, build the file. Karen confirming she'd posted it anonymously. Paper trail for us, plausible deniability. Karen saying I have a contact at Tri-State who owes me a favor. Week 6, the night before the ankle incident. Karen writing verbatim as Porter read it to me. I think we're ready. One more class and we make our move. I sat across the table from Detective Porter, and I looked at those screenshots and I felt something I can only describe as a complete reversal of gravity. Like the floor had become the ceiling, because I had been trying so hard to give these women the benefit of the doubt, to assume good faith, to believe that fear, even misplaced fear, was something a reasonable man should accommodate. They hadn't been afraid of me. They'd been hunting me. Mr. Adkins, Porter said, you understand there are formal charges being considered. What charges? Assault. Mrs. Aldis is alleging you physically pushed her to the ground when you forced your way into the studio. I had pushed past Donna's shoulder to reach my injured daughter on the floor. I said this, calmly. Porter wrote it down. He kept me 3 hours. He let me go at midnight without arresting me, but he told me not to leave the county and that there might be follow-up. My sister Angela had driven 4 hours from Macon by the time I got out. She was in the parking lot. She had already been to the hospital and was the one who had been with Lily when she came out of surgery. She was also furious in the specific way that our family expresses love, which is loudly and at whoever is available. I told her everything in the car on the way back to the hospital. By the time we pulled in, she had sent 3 texts and made 2 calls. Angela has always been the organized one. The morning news cycle hit before sunrise. The local paper ran a photo of me from the Tri-State Company directory, the one I used on my work ID, alongside a piece about a concerned mother standing up for children's safety. Karen was quoted by name. I was not named in the article, but my photo was there. The word suspected appeared in the caption. My neighbor Linda, who I had always liked, left a post-it on my door that morning that said only, "Is everything okay?" I could not tell if it was concern or surveillance. That ambiguity was its own kind of damage. By Tuesday, Tri-State had placed me on administrative leave. Doug called me personally, voice carefully neutral, to tell me HR had made the decision over his objection, and that it was pending review of the situation. I had been with that company 6 years. I had never had so much as a formal complaint. By Thursday, Lily's school called to tell me her presence was creating anxiety among other students and parents, and to ask if we could arrange for her to attend virtually for the time being. She was 8 years old, she had a broken ankle, and she was being asked to disappear from her classroom. I put her on the couch with her laptop and her stuffed elephant, and I went into the bathroom and ran the tap and stood there for a while. Our home address had been posted on a Facebook page called Hartwell Parent Alerts. The post included a Google Maps screenshot and what it described as a community watch advisory. 3 nights running, a car I didn't recognize idled at the end of our street. I wrote down the plate each time. That detail will matter. The word predator appeared on our garage door in red spray paint, capital letters, 6 inches tall, visible from the sidewalk. I painted over it the same morning. It reappeared 2 days later. I want to be honest about the state I was in during this period. I was not okay. I was sleeping 3 hours a night. I was not eating properly. My hands shook in the mornings. I was running the specific terror of a person who knows they are innocent, but can see the machinery of consequence moving anyway, indifferent to the truth of what they did or did not do. I had a daughter who needed stability, and I was trying to provide it. While the floor was dissolving, I found my lawyer through Elena Chen, who it turned out had been watching the situation with increasing alarm for weeks. Her name was Beverly Okafor. She was in Augusta, 40 minutes away, and she had a specific quiet confidence that made me feel for the first time since October like maybe I wasn't entirely alone. The planted detail, the one I mentioned, the one that matters, was the car. On the 12th day after the ankle incident, Beverly called me. She had been running the case quietly, pulling threads following money. She told me she'd run the plate from the car that had been idling on our street. It was registered to a man named Thomas Aldis, Karen's husband. I sat with that for a moment. He was watching his own wife's surveillance operation? Or, Beverly said, he was watching his wife. It took another week to find out which. The first crack appeared when a woman named Maria Suarez called Beverly's office. She had been at the studio the day Lily broke her ankle. Her daughter was in the older class that practiced after Lily's group. She had arrived early, which meant she was in the parking lot during the incident, and she had done what people do now reflexively in a confrontation. She had taken out her phone and started recording. The footage was 2 minutes and 47 seconds long. It showed the studio entrance clearly. It showed the upstairs window where I had been sitting for 6 weeks. The timestamp data was intact. I was in that window, visible, stationary, clearly not in the studio, until the moment the screaming started. Then it showed me coming out the door at a flat run, crossing the lobby and going down the stairs toward the studio. It showed the 3-woman wall forming in the doorway. It showed me going through it with one hand, a deflection, not a blow, and then the footage tracked to the parking lot as the squad cars arrived. And at the far right edge of the frame, partially obscured by a pillar, Karen Aldis, standing very still, watching the police cars with an expression that Maria described to Beverly as the kind of face you make when a plan is working. Lily's best friend Jasmine's mother, a woman named Tracy Pullman, showed up at Beverly's office without an appointment. She sat down and put her phone on the table and said she needed Beverly to look at something. Text messages, a chain between Tracy and Karen running 4 days after the ankle incident. Karen laying out word by word what Tracy should say to the police if contacted. Specific phrases, specific timing, Karen telling Tracy that if she didn't cooperate, she would make sure Jasmine was excluded from the birthday party circuit for the rest of the year, that the other mothers would know Tracy had sided with the predator, that social consequences would follow. Tracy had frozen. She'd told the police nothing at all, just said she hadn't seen anything clearly, but she'd kept the messages. She wasn't sure why she'd kept them. Instinct, maybe. Or guilt, or the same feeling I'd had for 2 months, that quiet certainty that something was very wrong and that someone should know. The third crack came from Thomas Aldis. He walked into Beverly's office on a Wednesday morning. No appointment, no lawyer, he was 53, an accountant, quiet the way people are quiet when they've been quiet too long. He sat down across from Beverly, reached into his coat pocket, and placed a USB drive on the desk. He slid it across without saying anything. Then he pressed play on a voice memo application on his own phone. What came through the speaker was Karen's voice, clear, unmistakable, recorded in their kitchen 2 nights after my arrest. She had believed he was asleep. She spoke for nearly 22 minutes in the way that people speak when they believe they are unwatched. Expansively, without editing, with the casual confidence of someone recounting a successful project. She said she knew I hadn't recorded anything. She acknowledged that specifically. She said the recording accusation had been a foot in the door to establish a pattern. She said the goal from week 1 had been to have me removed from the studio, and that when removal through official channels hadn't worked quickly enough, they'd needed to escalate. She said she had timed the formal accusation to coincide with a moment of physical contact, something that looked bad on video even if it wasn't. Because that was what the police needed to move. She said, men shouldn't be at ballet classes anyway. It's just not natural. Sometimes you have to exaggerate to protect kids from potential threats. She laughed, genuine unguarded laughter, the kind of laughter that does not know it is being recorded. Then she talked about the coverage in the paper and called it beautifully handled. She talked about reaching out to Tri-State and described my manager Doug as easier to move than I expected. She mentioned the Facebook post about our address and said the spray paint wasn't my idea, but I'm not going to pretend it wasn't useful. 22 minutes, Beverly filed it as evidence the same afternoon. Karen walked into her deposition 3 weeks later, wearing a charcoal blazer and her standard expression, which was a slight tilt to the chin that communicated she was doing you the favor of her presence. Her lawyer sat beside her, a partner from a firm in Athens she'd hired the week after Thomas walked into Beverly's office, which told Beverly everything she needed to know about Karen's information network. The deposition ran 2 hours and 14 minutes. I wasn't in the room. Beverly had advised against it, but she called me immediately after and described it in the specific, precise way that Beverly always communicated. No editorializing, just sequence and fact, and the facts were enough. Karen had deflected every question about the group chat. She said the screenshots were taken out of context. She said the phrase "make our move" referred to filing a formal complaint with the studio, not an orchestrated accusation. She said she had never threatened Tracy Pullman. She said the recording in her kitchen was a private conversation and its legality was questionable. Beverly let her develop that argument at length, and she said that nothing in any of it changed what she believed about me. She was composed. She was skilled. She had built a life on performing composure under pressure, and she did not crack under questioning. Then Beverly opened her laptop. She told Karen she wanted to play something for her and get her response. She pressed play. Karen's own voice filled the conference room. Clear audio, unambiguous, 22 seconds of it. Beverly had chosen the 22 seconds carefully. Karen saying she knew I hadn't recorded anything. Karen saying sometimes you have to exaggerate. I have been told by Beverly, and later by 2 of the support staff who were in the room, that Karen Aldis went through approximately 4 distinct colors in roughly 8 seconds. Something like white, then a kind of mottled red, then the white again, and then the color of fury, which is its own specific shade. She lunged across the table, not at Beverly, at the laptop like she could stop the audio by getting to the machine. She knocked a water bottle onto the floor. She was on her feet, and her lawyer was grabbing her arm, and she was already halfway to the door and screaming that the recording was illegal, that it was entrapment, that her husband had violated her privacy, that none of it would be admissible. Her lawyer asked for a recess. The case against me was dropped 4 days later. The aftermath didn't end with the case dropping. Endings in real life are not clean like that. They have edges and loose threads, and they cost things. Donna Hirsch issued a statement through a lawyer saying she had acted in good faith based on shared community concerns, and wished the Adkins family well. It was as close to an apology as a person gets when they're trying to avoid being named in a civil suit. Paula Merton deleted her Facebook post and her account, and has not, as far as I know, been heard from publicly since. Karen Aldis retained her Athens lawyer for ongoing proceedings. Beverly filed civil claims against Karen for defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, tortious interference with my employment, and a handful of other causes of action that I could not always follow when she explained them, but that I trusted her to pursue. I'm not allowed to discuss the terms of what was eventually resolved. I'll say this: it was enough to matter. It was enough to pay Beverly's fees, and then some. It covered the months of lost salary from Tri-State, who reinstated me with back pay after the charges were dropped. Doug personally called to tell me that, and his voice had something in it that I appreciated. A specific guilt that people carry when they know they didn't do enough fast enough, but also know they didn't do nothing. Lily came back to school in November. I drove her on the first day, walked her to her classroom, watched her push the door open and go in without looking back. The ankle was healed. The boot was gone. She had started back at the studio, a different studio 40 minutes away in Augusta, with a different instructor who had, when Beverly explained our situation, simply said, "Bring her Thursday," and nothing else. Thomas Aldis moved out of the house on Chestnut Ridge Road in January. I don't know where he went. Elena Chen told me there was a divorce filing in the county records. I have no feelings about this except the complicated kind that come from knowing a quiet man sat in a car outside my house for 12 nights watching his wife's operation, deciding something, and then walked into a lawyer's office with a USB drive. There was something in him that knew, something that couldn't keep going. I understand that. I don't know what it cost him, and I try not to think about it too much because I'm not sure the math comes out anywhere good. The spray paint came off the garage door eventually, 3 coats of primer, 2 of finish. You can still see the ghost of it in certain light at certain angles, when the morning sun hits the door low. I've thought about painting the whole door to make it disappear. I haven't done it yet. My sister Angela drives up from Macon 1 weekend a month. We sit on the back porch after Lily goes to bed and Angela drinks wine and I drink coffee and we talk about everything and nothing. It's good. It's one of the specific goods that came out of this period, and I try to keep track of those because the ledger needs balance. There's a thing that happened in the middle of all of it that I haven't mentioned yet. The moment I come back to sometimes. Lily was on the couch with her boot and her laptop doing virtual school the week she'd been excluded from the classroom, and she was on a science lesson about ecosystems. She called me over to look at something on her screen, something about how some animal, a bird I think, will feign injury to lure predators away from its nest. She said, "Is that what those ladies were doing, Daddy?" She was 8 years old. I told her sometimes people do things they can't explain clearly, and that the best thing we can do is understand what we know to be true about ourselves and not let other people write our story. She looked at me for a second and then said, "Okay," and went back to her lesson. She's 9 now. She's the best dancer in her new class. Her instructor, whose name is Dana, told me last month that Lily has something rare. Not just technique, but a way of feeling the music that you can either teach or can't, and Lily has it without being taught. She said it the way you say something true, simply, without decoration. I drove home that evening and sat in the car in the driveway for 5 minutes before going inside. I think about what I would say to the version of me who moved to that corner, in week 1, coffee going cold, phone face down, trying so hard to be invisible and unimposing and reasonable. I think about how much energy I spent trying to accommodate a fear that was never going to be satisfied. Not because all fear is unreasonable, some of it is deeply reasonable, but because this particular fear was not fear at all. It was a plan wearing fear's clothing. The title of this story, the thing I said out loud when I first tried to explain it to Beverly, they almost pulled it off. That's the part that stays with me. Not the vindication, not the deposition, not even Lily back on the floor with her arms up and that look on her face when the music starts. What stays with me is the almost. How close it came, how thin the margin was between my life as it is now and a version where Maria Suarez leaves the parking lot 10 minutes earlier and never takes out her phone. Where Thomas Aldis decides the cost is too high and stays in that house and says nothing. Where the folder on Detective Porter's desk is the whole story. There are no easy lessons in that proximity. There's just the recognition that systems built on assumption can run a long way on momentum before anything stops them, and that sometimes the thing that stops them is a quiet man with a USB drive and the specific kind of courage it takes to walk through a door you can't walk back out of. I showed up to watch my daughter dance. That's all I ever did. I'm still showing up.